Good evening. You're listening to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Tonight's episode, Xtreme TV. Tonight, we're going to be covering Kolchak from the early 70s, Season 1, Episode 3. I've got with me Professor Pixel and RDV. Good evening, gentlemen. How are we tonight?
Doing good.
Doing great.
Great. I think great kind of sums up how we feel about Kolchak, the personality. I think, is what some of the episodes turn out to be, but one thing I will say about after watching this episode 3 is I totally understand now why the X-Files, Millennium, Seven, any of those dreadful things that started to get really popular in the late 80s, early 90s, Silence Lambs, all that stuff. I can see where they have the seed here in Kolchak, because Kolchak, as we've talked about after the 2 TV movies and now 2 episodes of television that came after those television movies, great character. Maybe the episodes aren't as good as what the movies were individually, but it's still a solid, fun, enjoyable show. And I got to say, this one here is dealing with some interesting stuff, I think, from a writing perspective, which I'll cover here in a moment. But this is one where we get a nice extended overview shot of the city of Chicago. We get some zoom-ins, which we're starting to see on television, which I really like. It really gives you a sense of being there. And Kolchak, the subplot is that he's supposedly going to get a ticket to go see the Cubs in the World Series at that time, and, which we know, of course, they didn't show up until 2016. So I'm ignoring it. But at the Lincoln Park Zoo there in Chicago, animals are dying. He hears something on the radio because there's interference, which we'll talk about later, where he sees these cops. And even though it's kind of outrageous, oh, it's okay, I'm with the reporter, blah, blah, blah. And he runs up, and him and these cops see this, blow up in a building, and these pallets of lead that they're watching disappear out of the air. I'm like, what the hell's going on in this episode? Because I have not seen Kolchak. It's a first watch for me. I remember some of the episodes as a kid, but only pictures of them with my father, so I couldn't even tell you what they're about. So I'm going, I have no idea what the hell is going on. But about halfway through, I went, I get what's going on. So let's start with you, RDV. What was your initial take on this episode?
Well, this is different, and this is more, like I said, this is more the sci-fi, if anything. This is, they're here episode.
That's true. Pixel, what about you?
They have been, they are, they will be. It has a very ominous name for...
Yeah, you don't know what the title is referencing, and we do find out here in this episode. But let me start off with this, guys. Okay, so we get the exact same opening that we always do with the shot of Chicago and skylines, but the real intro is this little music whistling or whatever, and you see Kolchak coming in and pouring a cup of coffee and throwing his hat on the hat rack and of course missing and sitting down. I gotta say, this is a pet peeve of mine. I'm gonna give Kolchak credit. I get triggered these days. It's one of the few things that trigger me whenever I see a television show, a movie, a music video or something. When somebody's having a cup of coffee, tea, alcoholic beverages, guys, with a soda fountain drink, or they're sipping it and they're acting like it's real and it's not, that just bugs the real bejesus out of me. I cannot stand it. But Kolchak's got the legit cup of coffee, so I'm watching that cheap white classic styrofoam 8-ounce thing that he puts on his table while he's sitting down, and the thing's rocking, moving back and forth. And now every time I watch an episode, I get hypnotized by it. Don't know why. No need to comment on it. I'm just pointing out something that I'm marking over. I
want to talk about the actual title. The title is actually a nod to a Lovecraft story called The Dome Horror. Full line goes: the old ones were, the old ones are, and the old ones shall be.
Oh, someone's doing their due diligence.
Not in spaces, as we know, but between them. They walk, seen in primal undimensions, as to us unseen.
Well, pretty much a lot happens in this first act here. So, Pixel, let's go to you about this scene here. We get where these pallets of metal ingots go away. The cops are acting like they didn't see nothing. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that just in general as we finish up the episode. There's a missing cheetah. There's a scene up to this point where in the first of the 3 acts where he's talking to this lady about what's going on. She's looking under a microscope, and he's like, well, what about this animal that disappeared? What about this one that died? And she gives all these excuses, and there's more to it. I like how he's digging into it. Pixel, the line that would not ever be uttered on any platform today, which at the time was a throwaway line, seriously, where she's talking about, oh, it's really a baboon or whatever like that. The commies have them all, meaning the Chinese or whatever, the pandas. I kind of laughed and went, oh, that's right. Stuff like that won't be on TV. What's your take about this episode up to this point?
Well, we actually see Kolchak fully investigate. This is one of the better episodes because of it. while the threat
He's hot on the
isn't-
case.
Yeah, while the threat isn't as apparent as the other two have been.
Right.
It has that element, and he can't stop digging. It's why he misses the Cubs at the World Series. Because
Which anybody being a Cubs fan or sports fan knows how big of a deal that is.
Yes.
the happiest day of his life, he said. It's supposed to be the happiest day. But that case was important. He fought for it because he knew that it was a big deal. Basically, what we learn, this thing is going in, tapping into people's bones and drawing out all the marrow. And
Damn it, I was saving that for last. But go ahead.
Really?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Hydrochloric acid, bone
Yep.
marrow's missing. You're like, what the hell's the connection?
Well,
Exactly.
the connection, but the connection is that there's one great actor that appears on this, and it's all over his lawn, Mr. Dick Van Patten. Hey,
Yeah,
Abbott.
You guys won't know this, but the show in the late 70s, early 80s that he was popular on was 8 is Enough, and it fills our lives with love because it's about a guy that has like 8 kids.
Yeah,
You may not
looking
know
at-
that, but that was some people that are into the 80s would pop over.
I'm just browsing through his IMDb. You know, he's the Shaggy DA. He's all that stuff. You know,
He was a big name.
Barnaby Jones. You know,
Yeah.
Mercy. Yeah, when things are
And this
rotten.
guy, he was calling in on the radio show, and while Kolchak was trying to listen to the World Series, it kept cutting in between this and a radio show, and a caller came in. He's like, "They're leaving black tar stuff all over my yard," and Kolchak basically goes and takes it out, and the guy basically says, "Oh, you shouldn't talk about." You shouldn't worry about that. The city came in and they swept it all up. Those guys you can't trust. But my neighbor's the one you should talk to. Last night he was listening to the stereo and something came up, took it up, just tore it out of the wall. And he's like, he tore the stereo out of the wall. Yes. And I don't think the neighbor actually ever comes out. But it's enough for Kolchak to get an idea of what's going on.
Yeah, Kolchak has a really good line in here where he's arguing with Vincenzo or whatever the hell his name is, where he's like, "What are you talking about? Those people that stole that tape? They stole the tape that I stole," and he's real serious about it. He's offended, but I'll let you guys handle the absurd nature of what the reality of this episode is because I did like the ending. I will say this because I want to take a moment to be serious if I can about my favorite aspect of the show. Yes, we agree. McGavin, we've said this every episode, carries the show. It's almost over the top. What I really like about the show is not the supernatural element in modern day times. Even though this is 50 years ago, it was modernized. We talk about how that was a challenge. We can talk about the outdated aspects, like there was no cell phones. You had a small pocket camera to take pictures. Those things were a big deal. So they're anachronistic, if you will. Things that you have to write around when you're writing scripts at that time. But the one thing that as an adult watching this that I absolutely love, and it makes me feel a little bitter and cynical, and I hope it continues in all the rest of the episodes, is this. No matter what the monster of the week's been, and I'll let you guys finish with that, is that there's this bitterness, this cynicism about Kolchak, not about him trying to find out the truth, because I don't care about him being a truth seeker. I really don't. I really like how he runs into what I call, and we've said this before on every episode of the movies, the incompetent government fools that stand in your way between you and the truth. And they may know it, but they're afraid of actually exposing it because then that leads to something else. And it's the red pill, blue pill type thing that people like to reference. You take the red pill, you become aware of things. You may not like it, but at least you understand what's going on. Is there a benefit to it? I don't know. But blue pill people like to shut up and, suck their thumb and act like the world's okay, and that's fine. And I just really like the fact that it's Kolchak against the world. And this kind of reminds me, since this is dealing with an element you guys will talk about, mentioned before how Quinn Martin was a very famous producer in the 60s, going into the 70s of some television shows, really known for The Fugitive, over on our other Xtreme TV show that we're recording right now, Twin Peaks, there's been this major character that's shown up in the first few episodes called the One-Armed Man. That was taken right out of The Fugitive. And of course, Dr. Richard Kimball, played by David Jansen, finds actually the One-Armed Man in the very last episode. And that was the highest rated TV show for like 20, 30 years until Who Shot JR, and then I think something else after that. One of the highest still of all time. But Quinn Martin did this person, whether it was a doctor, whether it was an investigative guy who is in a show called The Invaders, that this reminds me of. Nobody believed who he was. Everybody blew him off. Government agents were tracking this alien. This guy was a reporter, I believe, just trying to go through from town to town and follow him. We see the same template starting to show up in the 70s with Kolchak and other great TV shows. The Incredible Hulk, have it, with Dr. Banner, going from town to town and chasing stuff. It's like the perfect setup. It's like a Western in a way. Stranger shows up to town, something happens. We don't know too much. We deal with it and move on. But yeah, this bitter and cynicism that Kolchak has and makes comments about dealing with the police, dealing with the system, I think is absolutely fantastic. That being said, let's go a little lighthearted for the way it finishes. Go ahead, guys.
I was going to say that one of his quote at the ending, it says, like, they tried to make a little park down the woods near Stank Rock. Daffodils, tulips, well, they couldn't get anything to grow. There's an airship like a saucer at the bottom. If you want to see it, you'll have to hurry. Our park commission decided overnight to do extensive reclamation work in that particular spot. They are filling with concrete. What happened? It's all in a point of view, really. A traveler has a breakdown, stops to fix it, gets a road map, has a bite to eat, and goes on his way. It's happened to all of us. The traveler happened to be light years off his course instead of miles. As for me, well, I haven't heard from the boys in the sedan yet.
Yeah.
In the sedan, exactly right. And when I think you say sedan, I think of, well, X-Files.
You can see where X-Files got their inspiration.
Yeah, they said that
this one episode, you feel that vibe.
But I like how he takes on the alien, taking pictures. It doesn't like it. It hates lights.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that's why we were maybe getting some interference too, and you couldn't pull in the Cubs game on the station driving early on because you're like, oh, he's just got a crappy car in his Mustang, or city interference, not going to pull in a good signal or whatever. I'm not sure if it was on AM at the time back in the 70s because AM was really popular, and then it died out, and then it came back in the late 80s. So I'm going, okay, that can happen, but it all makes sense too, and then you piece everything together. Okay, the animals seem like they have no connection to the asphalt and then to the iron, and you're like, what the hell is going on? There's no connection. And this is where this is clever writing, because it does all make sense. This alien, this UFO basically lands. The alien has to come out, and he has to survive by trying to get bone marrow and these other things to repair it. And you go, oh, iron to repair a ship, electronics for this. Yeah, and it's also a cheap way for them not to have to put makeup on another actor or pay one too, for the most part.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, that's how some things are decided over.
Yeah, they say how he feeds off a base metal. That's what this alien does. So
you gotta give them some credit though, because while they didn't dress up some guy, that saucer at the end was an actually very impressive prop. Just in design and. Obviously, it's cheesy TV flying saucer, but with how much work they put into it, it looked a little more than paper mache. That's what I can say.
Yep, it's believable.
Yeah.
If you believe.
Yeah. So I think another good episode of Kolchak. Obviously, I think the template's pretty much going to be the same, and I don't think there's going to be too much changing with it. So I'm starting to accept by now, 3 episodes in, what this television show is going to be. And I'm okay with that because, the template with him, he's going to get an argument with his boss. He's going to make some quips. He's going to have some stuff where he delivers his lines really sharp, fast. He's not a bitter man, but you can see him being frustrated with the system. And again, like I said, I really like that.
I got to hand it to Vincenzo. He's consistent. He has amnesia every episode.
Okay, but in this one, actually, you have to give them some credit because they just took everything that he had on the story, all his information, and Mitchell's like, I'm sorry, I tried to stop him, but they have badges. I couldn't exactly just send them away. And Kolchak is, frustrated.
I'm waiting for Vincenzo to have a heart attack because he's already on high blood pressure medicine because Kolchak.
I really don't like him, honestly. And I would hate to work for somebody like that. He doesn't come across as a buddy or friend or somebody that's looking out for you. I know he hooked Kolchak up with his job, or at least that's the way they write it.
Well,
But they have good chemistry, but I just don't like him. I don't
in
like
reality, he would have been fired after like the first, or like a couple times he does this, where he does, because when he has an assignment, he always causes headaches for them in the paper. So in reality, he would not Vincenzo, but I mean Carl Kolchak would have been fired, like he was from last time. They kicked him from the movies. They moved him to Chicago. Yeah.
Well, I'll say this and finish up with our final thoughts is that, like I say, I like this episode. Thought it was pretty good. I don't know the answer to this. This is a rhetorical question, but one thing about the show that made me think, and that's another thing I like about the show, sometimes I think about these kinds of things as I go, we're starting to see, like I say, the overhead shots, the way it's filmed and some zoom ins and stuff. And that's pretty good because this is the mid 70s. So you're getting some different camera techniques, some crash zooms and all sorts of things coming in. But to me, technically speaking, I go, which show is going to have early on, other than the Invaders, which is a late 60s show, this paranoid conspiracy thing with the government? There hasn't been many. And in the 70s, the occult was starting to get big in terms of the mainstream showing up in media. Obviously, the cult's been around for a very long time. But, you got Rosemary's Baby in the late 60s, I think it was 68, 69, with Roman Polanski. You've got this other thing. So you're seeing all this different things coming to the, actually, your small screen, too, in addition to the big screen. And I just go, I really was a huge fan of science fiction movies and all that too. But I always say, not the Pod People, but the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the original one, is terrifying to me. And other than that, the Manchurian Candidate and Quinn Martin's show, The Invaders, I'm looking at this going, Kolchak did a pretty good job with this, with the whole UFO thing, because the UFO thing is silly, let's be honest. You can't see them, okay, whatever, tacky TV. But the paranoia and dealing with the government agencies that just walk in, know everything, don't say anything, just take all your crap and walk away. That's 50 years ago. I really, really, really like that about the show. Final thoughts from you guys.
No, you're absolutely right. At the same time, when we had the police officers who were right there watching the lead ingots just fade away, they just blinked and they're like, okay, need some time off. Let's go.
Nothing to see here, just move along.
Wipe their hands clean. The explosion, another note that you miss it because you think that there would be, even though it's in slow motion, guys flipping around. It's silly. But
that was a big effect for them back then, yeah.
But there's no sound. That's their big thing that Kolchak says. The explosion with no sound. No, it's all these strange elements that they just, okay. People are too willing to just believe it's a happy little place.
If you don't see it, you don't believe it.
But they did see it.
And
but choose to ignore it.
Well, of course. And they probably figure out, hey, you guys are exposed to some kind of nerve gas, or something like that, or hallucinogenics, that's why it happened. Maybe some of you guys all ate at the station. Who knows? Donuts? Like I said,
fine cup of coffee.
Yeah, it's contaminated. Well, I've just learned that if you're going to be a journalist, do your work and always have a camera.
Yeah, be prepared, do the work, show up. That's half of it, battle right there. And it's a good lesson to learn. All right, there you guys have it. It's Kolchak Season 1, Episode 3. Another solid episode in the entry. And we're going to look forward to dropping Episode 4 here next week, too. So I'd like to thank Professor Pixel, RDV, everybody here involved at the Xtreme Movie Show for showing up for that. I really appreciate you guys, listeners that are retweeting it, liking and all that, too, on some of our channels and other outlets for our media. We're blowing up at it. So it's really interesting to see that, especially about such an old show, whether it's this, Twin Peaks, some of the martial arts movies we've been doing on our Kicking It channel too, some old ones, some new ones. We got quite a mix. So check out the Xtreme Movie Show, everybody involved with it, and let us know what you'd like us to cover. For everybody here involved, good night.